wrong, it could be earlier, but I highly doubt it, given what I've heard so far and the challenges associated with the vaccines that are available, and just the sheer volume of them. So um, until then, until we have a vaccination rate that's north of 70–80% of our population, we're not going to really be seeing a population benefit. It's just going to be protecting those individuals as we move forward. But hopefully we can expedite that once we get vaccines. We are meeting now on a daily basis, trying to figure out the logistics of it. These first two vaccines we're going to be getting are going to be a total pain in the butt, as a technical term. The first one requires -80 centigrade storage, which is really cold. I don't think Georgetown hits that even in the coldest day in the winter. So we don't have the capability to keep something -80 for that long. So whatever vaccines we do get, we're going to have to distribute them as soon as possible, within days of receiving them. So we're going to be rolling out more information as we go along. It's really hard to educate the public at this point because things are changing so much week to week. And I really don't want to be telling people something one week and then it changes and then I have to change what I'm saying to them. It just creates more confusion. So we're sort of waiting till things settle down and we actually know some real numbers that we're going to be receiving before we start telling people what's what. Any questions so far? The only other thing I wanted to talk about is the Mesa County. I'm sure all of you have heard of Mesa County and the wonderful program that they're doing, and it's saving the world. Sarcasm aside, the reality is this. Mesa County many months ago implemented what is nothing more than a restaurant inspection process. They rolled it into COVID and COVID guidance and guidelines. Mesa County has been doing this because they have had relatively low numbers as of a few weeks ago. And when CDPH heard about it, they said to the other counties, why don't you guys implement this and do the same exact thing? Our response was what you might expect. First and foremost, we need to understand, one, if it's effective. If it's nothing more than a glorified restaurant inspection, I don't know how that's going to change the game in terms of what we're seeing in COVID numbers. So we haven't seen any data or any information from Mesa County. The second question is, how many staff does it take to actually implement this? Because they're literally going to every restaurant every week and doing an inspection. Most counties that I've spoken to don't have the staff to do anything even remotely close to that. I mean, Larimer County, as an example, would have to hire 12 to 20 restaurant inspectors just to do this one thing. And without any proof that it actually works or makes a difference in terms of transmission, it's very hard for counties to say, okay, we're going to hire 25 people or 15 people to help implement this program. The state is in the process of trying to figure out if there's parts of it that would work. I don't know what I've seen of it. It's literally that, somebody going and inspecting your restaurant to say, Mike, everything looks great. You guys are doing everything that you can. Here's the caveat with all that. If I walk into your restaurant with my best friend who I don't live with and haven't seen in 6 months, and I sit across from them for an hour because we're having a great time and chatting, and I'm only 3 feet away from them, there's nothing the restaurant is doing or could do to keep me from getting COVID in that very situation. And that is where we're seeing the majority of cases that occur in restaurants. It's nothing the restaurant isn't doing or is doing. It's who comes into your restaurant and where are they, what table are they sitting at? Because for the most part, most restaurants, you're not 6 feet away from somebody if you're sitting at the same table as them. The vast majority of restaurants, you're less than probably 4 feet away from them. So implementing some sort of restaurant inspection program won't really address that aspect of restaurants. And this is why in Code Red, restaurant inside seating is closed. It's not because you guys aren't doing your job. You guys are doing a great job. It's because of the scenario that I just described. Same is true in bars, right? People spend hours in there without a mask, very close contact. And this is in turn the problem. So I know there's a lot of chatter about it and the likes, but without evidence and without staff to actually carry something like this out. The other thing CDPHE said is on our conversation last week, counties that are in orange and red, they're not going to allow us to implement it anyway. If we're in level red and there's no inside dining, me inspecting your restaurants isn't going to change anything from that perspective. Any questions about that? I've been getting a lot of emails today, so I figured I'd take the opportunity to explain at least what it is and what our perspective is on it. I don't foresee the state coming out with a statewide plan that we can all implement. And by the way, the state is giving us this much money and resources to implement anything that we do. From a restaurant perspective, other than the grants and the monies that they're giving for that, we're not getting any staff to do restaurant inspections.
Dr. Ryan, we have a question in the chat asking, do you see the chance of us reaching that purple level, either statewide or in the county?
I do. It's possible. We'll see how much comes from Thanksgiving. Mike, I've seen pictures and heard far too many people who've had dinner, Thanksgiving dinner with someone who doesn't live in their home. And right now, my estimate, if I had to best guess how many Coloradans were infected, I would say it's probably at this point about 1 in 20, 1 in 25 is actively infected. So it doesn't take a whole lot of math to figure out that, you know, those numbers this coming week and the week after are absolutely going to explode. I would be shocked if they didn't. Not only in Colorado, but across the country.
Commissioner Marlin said he only saw that Thanksgiving travel was only down 4%. So right. That's not helping us either. So real quick, thanks for I was actually talking with another business owner this morning and told them the same thing, that, you know, once upon a time we had local inspections for our restaurants through Clear Creek County, but about 8-9 years ago it switched over to the state. And for us to get that kind of inspections and keep close eye on what we're doing here and being able to implement something like that, just like you said, is impossible for the bandwidth that we have. So thanks for talking about that. Another thing I want to make sure of that this group knows is the testing site. This is Jefferson County coming up and setting up an additional testing site, or to replace our drive-through.
No, it's not Jefferson County. It's Curative. So the company that we're actually using that does the test analysis and the swabs and all that sort of stuff, they've implemented basically an offering to the state to say, we know your public health staff is overworked and doesn't have bandwidth to do this. So we'll do once a week a separate community testing where they drive their van up to Clear Creek. The challenge is right now, and I'm not going to get into the weeds with it, but we're having to augment their staff for it. So we'll be there alongside them, trying to implement it. The challenge Jefferson County had is they had people in line for 5 hours. There were so many people last week who came to the test site, and we've tried our best to avoid that. By advertising it correctly and making sure that people pre-register before you come. If you do not register, you have to register in line, and it's a pain in the butt for everyone. So if you know anyone who's intent on getting a test on Wednesday, please have them go online and pre-register on the Curative website. It's mandatory.
And the location of this is going to be over near 103. There's the parking lot across from the old school right next to the bus barn. This is where, right. Not the bus barn, but the ambulance facility. They call it A2. Correct.
Yep. And they'll be there for 6 or 7 hours on Wednesday, starting, I believe, at 8 a.m.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Does anybody else have any? Dr. Ryan's got about 10 minutes. And one thing that I do want to talk about real quick while we've got him on with us is, Dr. Ryan, we've been talking about putting some tables out in our park area, separating them out and allowing people to use those tables when they get to order. We're also talking, we know that these tables have to be cleaned after every use. Is it problematic for us to try to do something like that, as long as we're making sure that we have the 6-foot rule designated there?
Where did you say you're putting the tables?
In Citizens Park, right downtown, we have a park, and we were thinking of even closing down 16th Street so we could put some tables out in the street. Is this a bad idea, or can we make this work?
No, I don't think it's a bad idea. I think you can make it work. It just requires, as you stated already, cleaning. The only other thought I had around it is if you start to have people congregate who don't live together, people hang out in the park and suddenly you have 4 people at the table, none of which live together, which is my only concern.
Also outside is same family also, or outside can you have 2 families together?
What depends on a lot of variables. It depends on the size of the table. Is it a tiny little table where you have 6 people around it and they're literally 2 feet apart? That's a challenge. The other challenge is how long they sit there, Mike. I mean, if you're there 10 minutes and you're gone, that's different than you spending an hour and a half across the table from someone without a mask, even though you are outside, and that is better than inside. If you're literally 3 feet from someone outside for an hour and a half, your risk is quite high compared to if you were 10 feet apart with a mask inside. I'm not going to get into the weeds with it, but there are challenges with it in and of itself. I don't think it's a bad idea. It's just going to require some monitoring and figuring out what's best practice for what is there.
Because I know another situation that came up with me this weekend was you have 4 skiers together. They don't live together, and they're going to sit at a table and they want to eat outside and have a beer. So now we have to go up and say, either we need to see your driver's license, because if you don't live in the same household, we can't have you sit together out here. So if to monitor that in an area that we're really not going to have a single business supervising that area might be problematic, but at least it gives us some things to think about as we continue our conversation today. Anybody else have any questions for Dr. Ryan?
I had a question. This is real quick. My wife told me that she had heard that Governor Polis had stated that he was not going to accept patients from out of state anymore. Is that true?
Chip, if I had $1 for every time a politician told me one thing and did the other thing, I'd be in your shoes.
Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute, Dr. Ryan. You got Chip Roberts at least in here that's gonna.
Hey, I'm not putting all politicians in that group. Even though Chip, to answer your question, I wouldn't doubt it to be true, because at this point, Colorado has been taking in patients from a lot of our neighboring states, South Dakota, Wyoming, which basically have no medical infrastructure across the whole state, who've been struggling with their numbers for 3+ weeks now. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. As our numbers go up, I mean, the governor's job is to look out for Coloradans, not people from South Dakota and Wyoming and other places like that. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. I haven't heard anything official, though.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know. I want to hear Dr. Ryan's take on Denver mayor and what he did.
And that's a case study of what not to do if you are an elected official. To have a public service announcement at the terminal about how you shouldn't travel anywhere and then get on an airplane. That's a case of what not to do. One thing I wanted to do, because I talked this morning to a lot of the staff and teachers at the high school, middle school, and a lot of their questions were around the vaccine. And I know I said we're a few months away for the folks on this call, but I think it's important for you to understand some of the reality behind the vaccine. And I would encourage, when they are arriving, for everyone to get vaccinated. Despite the effort to politicize the vaccination process, it's sort of impenetrable to that sort of nonsense purposefully. Each of the drug companies has a completely independent review panel made up of statisticians, epidemiologists, physicians, virologists, and the likes. That group's sole responsibility is to make sure that the vaccine is, one, efficacious, and two, safe for human consumption, if you will. Once it passes them, it goes to the FDA, who has the exact same process. They have epidemiologists, statisticians, medical doctors, immunologists, and the likes who review the data as well and make that same determination. Is it safe and is it efficacious in a level that's worth manufacturing? Once it passes the FDA, it has to go to the CDC and undergo the same thing. Politicians are not involved in any of those processes. They're all career professionals whose entire job and purpose is to go over vaccines. Yeah, exactly, George. So you basically have 3 layers of safety and efficacy review by 3 independent, separate, non-political panels to determine, and the same process is used for the flu vaccine, for every vaccine that's ever been manufactured in modern history, goes through this same process. So I know a lot of people's opinion is tainted about it, and the process has been expedited exponentially. Part of the shortening of the whole process too has been manufacturing of the vaccine simultaneously. That's never done, primarily for financial reasons. It's a humongous gamble. They basically started manufacturing the vaccine the moment they sent it out for the beginning of the clinical trial. In order to have enough vaccine when they determined it was safe and efficacious to start shipping it out. So the vaccine will start getting shipped out literally the day of, or potentially the day after it's been given approval by the FDA. So that's sort of where we're at. There's 4 vaccines coming down the pike. 2 are a little more logistically problematic than the other 2. But the efficacy rate is incredibly high, above 90, which exceeded almost everyone's expectations of it. And one of them shows great efficacy around preventing severe outcomes, hospitalization or death, which is really what we want with any vaccine, right? So I would strongly encourage it. I'm going to get one of the vaccines. I don't know which one I'll get, whichever comes to me, but I'm intending to get it, as are my staff. And I have a call with EMS and the police, et cetera, to explain sort of the same thing and the nuances of the vaccine and the vaccines. Any questions?
All right, Dr. Ryan's got about another minute. So if we've got any questions for Dr. Ryan, we need to get it out there now. One I ask is, where exactly is the school district right now? I know that they're in the middle school and high schoolers are in remote learning. Until when, and what do you think is going to happen as we move out into the future?
Are you asking me as the mayor or as a parent?
I'm asking you as a parent and a PhD.
So where we're at right now, we decided this week that, well, Karen and Chris decided with my guidance that this week it was probably the most ideal situation to be remote. They did a survey of the faculty at the high school, middle school, and 60% reported they were intending to have a Thanksgiving dinner with someone outside their home. Given that fact, we decided this week was best to be remote. And then the intention is this Friday morning to test all staff that are willing to be tested. And that was my point of talking to them this morning, to identify potentially individuals who have already converted to positive, and I'm sure we will have some. And then the intent is to potentially get back into school next week and the following week before the Christmas break. The caveat to all of that is if too many of the staff become positive, they only have 3 substitutes for the middle school, high school. So it allows them very little wiggle room to have in-class school when 6 or 7 of their teachers are COVID positive and in isolation and unable to actually teach. So there's lots of unknowns at this point. We were also hoping to have curative tests back by Sunday. It doesn't look like that's going to be reality. Curative is in high demand. So our 36 to 48 hour turnaround time has now turned to about 72 hours, which is not ideal, but it's better than any other option, which we don't actually have any other option. So it's our best option at this point. So I'm hopeful, Mike. I'm hopeful that next week the high school, middle school will be in session. And next week and the following week, and hopefully we can create some sort of bubble. But again, it's dependent on people's behavior and making the right decisions and doing that sort of thing. So.
All right. You got 2 minutes, Dr. Ryan. Thank you again for giving us an update on our meeting that we do for our community recovery team, and giving us the information, the updated information over the weekends, and what to kind of look out for, and give us that guidance. We really appreciate what you do, and all the staff up there that are working with us on this. So thanks again.
You're more than welcome. Have a good day.
Okay, you too. All right, everybody. We've got about 30 minutes. Let's dive right in. Steve was not in town this weekend, so I'm not going to call on him. Marcel, what did it look like this weekend? And can you give us any heads up or some thoughts of what's working, what's not working?
What's working is heaters, patio heaters. And people are tolerating like sub 30-degree temperatures if you get them something to sit next to that they can keep warm by. And they're also being very respectful of the multiple family rule. I've got tables that split into two, so I've been kind of separating those. You can see I've got fire pits in the middle of them now, so I'm kind of keeping those people away from each other as much as possible. But the sun's been really kind to us, as it always is in Colorado. So, basically when the weather's good, people are still coming up, and there's just this astronomical amount of people that are like, how come I can't eat inside? And I have to apologize on behalf of the state that we haven't communicated that to them. That being said, I think they all get it. But all in all, I mean, I haven't had anybody being unruly about wearing masks, and everybody's been just incredibly grateful they can actually eat and drink somewhere other than their house. So the ski traffic seems to be picking up. That's really been a big part of my business so far. But I'm optimistic. I really like what I'm seeing as far as travel. I know that's disheartening when you hear that people are supposed to be staying home for the holidays, but if they're being safe and they're following my rules, then I still feel like I'm not part of the problem. So, looking
All right.
good.
Yep. Thanks, Marcel. Randy?
What was interesting to me is that this Thanksgiving week beat last Thanksgiving. But when you go look at last Thanksgiving, 4 of the days were impacted by storms and slides and I-70 closures and all that type of stuff. So the fact that it was basically a little bit better, but basically the same as last year from a forecasting standpoint is good. But it's still clearly slowing down. And of course, it's deadly slow out there today. Overall, I'm actually pleased that we've got people coming into town. But again, it's kind of hard to compare Thanksgiving of last week.
All right. Sadie?
Yeah, I can kind of echo what Randy said. I saw pretty similar traffic or sales traffic that I did to last year, but when compared to like 2018, we were pretty down significantly from 18 to this year to make more comparable, because again, the I-70 closure on Friday, Black Friday, last year was pretty impacted sales quite a bit. So I think the thing that I'm struggling with the most, and I think Andy witnessed it in my store over the weekend, is because of the limited staff that I have, it's almost impossible for me to regulate the amount of people in my store without paying a person to stand at the door and count. And I echo what Marcel is saying. Most people have no idea what's going on. They don't understand. They're like, well, oh, you guys are locked down? Oh, we didn't know. Sorry, we're from Texas, we're from Florida, we're from wherever. I think 90% of my traffic this weekend were tourists. So it's definitely very difficult on busy weekends like that to regulate the amount of people in the shop. I think everybody is being very respectful once you explain what's going on. But it is a stressful time to be a business owner right now, trying to make sure we're following all of these rules. and
Right.
still be able to make money and
Right.
survive.
All right, thank you, Sadie. Linda?
Yeah, I think Sadie gave a lot of good detail about this past weekend versus the same weekend last year. If you look at the month, we're at 50% of what we normally do. And like Sadie and Randy said, this past weekend wasn't that different from last year's Thanksgiving weekend. We're just trying to keep everybody safe, and we're definitely losing money, but keeping employees employed as much as possible. And in the store, we've removed all the extra furnishings, and we've really made it large in there. So we are lucky that we have 4,000 square feet, and it's not that hard to keep people apart from each other. So just, really concerned about the restaurants, and whatever we can do for the restaurants, we want to be here for them.
All right, thank you, Linda. Just real quick, let's see, Greg. Is that Greg from Cidery? All right, Asa, real quick.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. So yeah, we closed, as I mentioned last week. So I don't really have anything comparable wise. I was interested in specifically what heaters Marcel was using. We think that to reopen, to do outside, we want to try to do that. We're just not sure when. Yeah, I don't really have any specifics, just we were closed. Apologies, last week my computer died, so I didn't hear any discussion about putting the barriers in place on the north side. And I'd just like to hear what you people are thinking about doing that. I would put some tables out front if that was the case. And just checking in where we're at on that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Hey, so what, I just kind of want to know how it was going up in Breckenridge. Greg?
So yeah, our restaurant up there, it's really tough to compare numbers because when we're fully open, we run really good numbers. So we're maybe doing 5 or 10% of what we normally do there. And that's with a fairly robust to-goes. The phone's ringing steadily. I think up there, they just have a much larger local population. So that allows for more business to be spread around. So up there, the hotels are all 100%, not necessarily this week, next week, but starting around the 20th of December, all the hotels are at 100% for about 4 weeks. And so we anticipate that just because of that, the to-go business will be pretty fair because people have hotels, places that they can take. Unlike here, most of our visitors are passing through.
All right, thanks, Greg. Hey, I'm going to let Andy take over for a second. I've got to take a quick bio break. Andy, take over for a second, would you?
Yes, be happy to, Mayor. Let's see, who else? Let's see. I know we have the new owners of, just went out of my head. Help me out, somebody.
Wild Grape.
Wild Grape, thank you. I apologize. It just got so much on my mind right now. We have the new owners of the Wild Grape, I believe, who are on right now. If you are, would you say hello to us and tell us how things are going for you? John, do we have them on or am I mistaken?
There's 2 phone numbers I don't know, but I don't believe they're here.
Okay. I saw some new names on there. Let's go to Asta. Asta, what's on your mind?
Nothing. I just agree with what Marcel said. I was blown away with how many people were willing to sit in the shady cold patio if we had heaters. So it'll be nice. Are we getting the barriers this week from CDOT? Do you guys know?
I know that our public works superintendent made contact today. He had called last week and had made contact with the right person at CDOT. And he had made contact today, and I know he's working on that with them to see about acquiring those and then getting them placed. So they are still in the works. I don't have a time frame yet, but I know we're working hard to get those.
Okay,
The mayor
cool.
was optimistically saying next week, this week.
Yeah, that's what
That's what I heard from him last.
Okay. Yeah, because that'll help us a lot too if we can have some more people on the sunny side. But with what Sadie said, too, it was mostly tourists. People had no idea that they couldn't sit inside. But yeah, no problems. It was good to be open.
Very good. Thank you.
Right
Yeah.
there. Awesome. All right. Let's jump into some things. Let's talk about the barriers. We have finally gotten response back from CDOT. John Bordotti, our Public Works Director, is working on that as we speak. As soon as we get the logistics of how CDOT or Graham's going to help us get those things over here and help us get them set, we'll be bringing them in. Let's see, is everybody that we had designated to get the barriers, are you still wanting those where we talked about putting them? And I'm going to direct this at Asta. Asta, are you going to be able to really get tables outside? Or are you good with just having your windows open and providing outdoor seating that way?
We were thinking of moving the picnic tables to that side just because it's that sheet of ice that's just so cold there.
Okay.
So if we could move them, they'd fit there. And then we'd also like to move some bar stools out and just have some kind of by our garage doors too. So we could have, a couple groups of 4 or whatever. Just have them on both sides of the windows. But yeah, as far as Mason and I talked about it this weekend and kind of walked it again, and we'd still like to do it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
In front of the cidery, when were you planning on reopening?
So we're pretty tentative. We want to reevaluate like the week before Christmas and see if it makes sense to do that. If the numbers like we expect, we anticipate the spikes in levels and no relaxing. I wouldn't know specifically when we would. Just that we would do it before the restrictions are lifted completely, but we'd like to know that it's going to happen. We may start January 1. We may start the week before, or maybe at the end of January. It's a real toughie. I'm not sure.
So do you want us to go ahead once we get the go ahead? Once we get the go ahead with CDOT, you want us to go ahead and put the barriers where we talked about in front of your place?
Yeah, that would make sense. We would definitely put some tables out there. I'm just not sure when, but if it's a process where you need to get those put in place, then I would say go ahead. Unless it would be something that we could do ours on a different day later on, but I don't know if that's feasible with the scheduling. They probably will want to do it all at once.
Yeah, that's what I would like to see all done this go around and be done with it until next spring when we start looking at reactivating the whole street again. So yeah, I'm not sure that we could get CDOT, 2 weeks from now to come back out and help us some more.
Yeah, so if you feel I'm sorry, Mike, if you feel the need and you think that it's going to happen once, then yes, definitely, I would say go ahead and put those out front.
Okay, good. John Kane, you have a question?
I did have a conversation with a business owner who can't be here today, who was concerned about if there's going to be slush coming over the barriers onto people as cars drive down the street, if there's like snowy slush. He wondered if we have a plan for how to handle that.
No, we don't have a plan. And I would hope that with the speed limit down through there but it could still splash above it. Thoughts group, that's something that hadn't come up that we should discuss.
Mike, this is Randy. I would say, and again, I'm not going to have the barriers, but if I'm a restaurant owner and I'm concerned about the splash, I'm going to be out there with a shovel in front of the barrier area, just trying to protect my seating because that's so important to me. And I know that from a city standpoint, you all are going to try and keep the roads as clean as possible, but I'd be out there with a shovel protecting my tables.
Isn't most of the outdoor seating going to be in an enclosed kind of pod greenhouse type thing anyway?
Those greenhouses got shut down, so we're going with some different structures. But
We'll meet the
I mean,
wind.
yeah, I don't think the slush is going to be too bad. You guys are always great about getting the street cleaned, and I mean, if it's slushy, you just got to kind of wait until you shovel what you can out of the way. I think Randy, I think you're right. I mean, Lord knows I'll be out there with a shovel helping, TJ across the street, helping him get his, street side cleaned. I think a team effort on this is going to work. I mean, winters it's slow. So I haven't noticed that the slush is really bad, ever. It's bad. Yeah, it's bad on the south side where there's a little bit more shade, but I think on the sunny side it'll probably be okay.
Okay.
I was just wondering about the barricades when there's a big snow and I mean, we noticed a lot of ice buildup on our side. This is Lindsay with Two Brothers. There was a lot of ice buildup and snow pack kind of on the side of the street. And so what's the plan for kind of clearing out in between the sidewalk and the barriers?
Between the sidewalk and the barriers will be the responsibility of the business that is being that is used as activating that space. So if we have barriers in front of your place, Lindsay, it'd be your responsibility to clear it and throw it over the Jersey barrier so the city can plow down the street. So if you don't want to have to maintain that area, then this isn't going to be good for you. So that's the other thing I want everybody to make sure of, that they have the staff and the capacity of, clearing that snow out of there, because it's going to be your responsibility. If you want snow piled up in there and it ends up there and you can't use it, I mean, I'd hate for it to get that way, but I could see that happening, and then people just wouldn't use that, and that snow would just continue to pile up in that area.
I have a question. This is Sadie. The space in front of the Spice and Tea Shop, we're happy to donate that space to whoever, and we would be happy to help maintain it, just because, again, we know as a retail shop that if the restaurants have increased capacity, I have more business. So our staff has happily volunteered to help keep clean and keep that space in front of the Spice and Tea Shop clean. I don't know if anybody's talked to Azteca or anybody else, but we'd be open and willing for that as well.
That's good to know. We Azteca was not out on site with us, but we always look out for the folks that aren't with us on site. But we were planning on blocking off in front of Azteca, but we will extend it down to your area. I want to think that we had a lot of that all the way down. I'd have to go out there and look all the way down to Pickaxe, because he wanted to activate some of that space too. So thanks for that, Sadie. That's what it's going to take, is everybody working together this winter to, for us to learn together and work together to know what we'll do next year, right? All right. Let's see. John, what else is on the agenda? I did not get to open it up. Oh, let's talk about the communal picnic tables in Citizens Park and 16th. Is this something that we want to do? And are we going to be able to have somebody that, I'll say, monitors, not controls, but monitors the area and make sure that it stays clean and disinfected? Where is everybody standing on that? And how can we put a plan together? Anybody?
I guess, my thought on it was basically, again, as I had mentioned last week, is have the Moose basically take care of the area. Maybe they staff to watch it, and because they're right there. have all the alcohol service go through the Moose. That way they get income from it. And then perhaps we figure out something, and I'm not sure exactly what that is that the, the other restaurants that whose clientele are utilizing the space would actually help to pay for the staff for keeping it cleaned up and that. But I guess in my thought would be basically Asta and Mason having the staff, and then we would somehow reimburse them for taking care and supervising it.
Asta, do you have any comments on that?
Hi, yeah, Mason's here too. Sorry, because we're kind of homeschooling Cooper today, so we'll tag team it. Mason can.
Yeah, we don't have a problem doing something like that. Right now, it just depends on, I'm still waiting to get the paperwork back from Diane Brees so that we can make amendments to our premises, for liquor service. Would we have to include the entire park for that?
Well,
When we do that amendment, and then we also have to, we're going to pay for our change already, but like I said, we were just going to kind of do the exterior and the south side of our building. So
we
just
Mason, are you guys? Yeah.
We did get a document from our city legal the other day, and we are still, I think it was late Friday that we got, or something. I don't remember when it was, but there is a way that the state is allowing an area to be considered for open container. And we're looking into that to see how that would play in and if it's a right model for the city to use to try to make this happen. Or does it make more sense in just redoing the Moose's liquor license that would include all that area? Any thoughts, Andy? Or John?
I would think it might be easiest just to include that in Moose liquor license. That way they're controlling it. And I like the idea that, I forget who it was, that somebody had that last week that, the Moose maybe especially handles, the beers coming out of that are locally brewed. I don't know how many of their beers they handle, but maybe they push more of those beers also.
Are we still on?
And so what are y'all's hours right now? Y'all are only open on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday?
Right now, yeah, but that's just because, just because we've laid off our staff and we're just kind of, just experimenting with what works for us, so that's why we've been doing weekends. But we have no problem being open all week.
Okay. All right.
But it would, kind of like we talked about last week, I think limited hours is probably best. Like, I don't know if we want to have, if we did like 11 to 5 or something until it got dark and pretty chilly.
Yeah.
But I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are on that. And
Limited hours and weather dependent.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Once that sun goes down, once we need the sun to come up over the mountain, and then once it goes down, it does chill out.
It gets cold.
So I like that 11 to 5.
Yeah, and we're happy to sell westbound and down beer, Tommyknocker beer. whatever. If people want to come up with their own signature cocktails or something to promote them, we can do whatever to work with everybody. So,
Tommyknockers and westbound, are you too concerned about getting beer sales for y'all around that area?
Mommy, can you help me?
Something that you're not really too concerned about.
I'm happy to support in any way I can. I don't specifically, I have such a good amount of space behind my restaurant. I don't think we need it. With the staff that I have, we can control the area that we already have. And then, we can support with beer sales. But I think whatever I can do to help from a distance is good, but we don't need to be directly involved in it.
Steve?
Yeah, the main thing is to support the Moose. They already sell some of our products, and that's great. But what works for them if they're maintaining it and using their liquor license?
All right. Then I think we've got a good plan together. We just need to kind of lay that out. Then we have to, and I want to circle back up with John Bordoni about closing 16th, because we need to be really cognizant of traffic movement back there to make sure people can get in and out safely and we're not running into traffic jams. John?
You need to draw a picture for.
I just wanted to let you guys know that Alyssa Dinberg sent us something from DOLA today. There's a new grant. There's always a new DOLA grant, but this one is for winter restaurant in downtown rural economic development. And it can be used for rural communities that have less than 50,000 people, which we fully qualify for this program. But basically it can do projects that include construction materials, contractor fees, tents, heaters, heating equipment, furniture, lighting, snow removal, safety measures equipment, cold weather gear for staff or patrons, infrastructure, art projects, or other expenses. And I think that if we went down the road with this project, we could apply for a grant for it too. Or if there was something else you guys wanted to do the funds, we could go for that too. But I just thought it'd be a good time to talk about it since it could help, build this area or whatever we need to do.
Well, that's that ready.
John,
John,
are we
ready?
eligible if we got CARES money? If we already got the other grant that came from Clear Creek, is that,
Yeah,
are we eligible for?
the city or the Economic Development Corporation would probably be the body that applies for this, likely the city, and then we would run it. We would just run a program based on what the group recommends. So, something to support that, outdoor dining and outdoor operations and that kind of stuff. But I think that it looks like we could get $30,000.
How much, John?
Up to $30,000.
Up to $30,000. And that has to be applied through either the government or a nonprofit. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, it says intergovernmental agencies, housing authorities, economic development organizations, nonprofits, private employers is on there, or tribes.
So they can, so businesses can apply for that on their own, up to 30,000.
Yeah, the fund isn't that big. There's only $100,000, so it's probably going to be, it's going to be competitive for sure. But if we want to do it, even if it was a smaller amount, if we wanted to talk about, like Marcel did, about if we could figure out a way to make fire pits or heaters or something like that work. I know they've talked about parkas in relation to this for, having people be able to get a big old winter parka when they come or whatever. So not that we do that. I'm just saying there's some creative options here.
While we're talking about grants, Dan, are you there? Dan Ebert? Dan? All right, hopefully Dan will jump back on. I was really hoping to ask him if he sees any future of another round of PPP or SBA or anything that's going to happen, that's going to help us. Dr. Ryan being very forward about, he thinks that this is going to get worse before it gets better, and that we might be in a purple level. It's a complete shutdown, stay at home order within the next coming weeks. So that's troubling to hear, and not knowing if there's going to be any help for us this go around with new leadership at the presidential level. And I know that Governor Polis is working on stuff. George, were you did you get on the call with Congressman Nagoose last week? I couldn't get in. Were you on that call, or was that just for mayors?
I missed the one that was for commissioners, but I have a handful of updates as it relates to sort of future relief funding. You probably know the state legislature is in emergency session right now. Those grant amounts are not huge, and the state is hoping that it's just something to kind of continue to get people through until the federal government comes through. We also heard that Congress is going back into session. One of the things that they would like to do is extend the CARES deadline, and possibly something narrowly applied to economic relief for restaurants at least. So there's kind of a handful of updates at the state and federal level. I don't really have anything more concrete than that, except that to say that I'm engaged in the process and am communicating lessons we've learned locally, so that future rounds of funding work well for us and you.
Hey, Mike, I did this morning read the bills that relate to kind of our industries that the Colorado House and Senate are looking at. And the two that seem to apply the most to us is, and I'm guessing they'll go through, but we'll see, One would allow businesses that receive PPP to get, I think it was 20% of what they were awarded in PPP coming from the state. And so that's one of the bills being discussed. And then the other is that kind of 4-month forgiveness on the 2.9% Colorado sales tax. So those are two that were written up as bills that are being discussed. So that's at least a small amount of potential relief for a lot of people.
All right. Thanks, Randy. John, what else? We're going to move pretty quick because we're running out of time. We went about an hour over last week. John, what else was on the agenda? I can still never get it open.
That was all.
Okay. So, George, I know we're meeting at 4:00 for discussion about the grant. So I don't think there's any updates right now to give. Alyssa, are you on with us? I do not see Alyssa today. All right.
Eric, Dan said in the chat that he doesn't have any indication of a future round of funding.
Okay. Oh, I see it now. All right. Interesting.
Do we have any updates on additional trash cans for Minor Street?
I don't have John Bordoni. I know we've got some extras. Andy, we'll get with John and tell him to get some more out there. Because I think Sadie said last week that the cans are filling up fast when people are getting to go orders.
Yeah, it's becoming a morning thing where every morning I have a significant amount of trash sitting on my windowsill outside of my shop. So
yeah, because the trash can is
because we have one trash can on Minor, maybe 2, and we have 6 restaurants doing to-go food.
Okay, I will get with our public works director and get some more trash cans out there.
You know, temporarily, Chris Doyle has some extra roll-offs. He's given me 2. He might be able to give us a bunch for the street. I mean, those aren't pretty. They're all blue, but maybe he could be recruited to help us short term to just drop some on each corner.
Yeah, let us. John Bordoni said we had some. Let me see what we got over there before we
okay
to turn to that. George, did you have something else? All right. Thanks again, everybody. As soon as we hear about when the Jersey barriers are going to start rolling in, we'll reach out to everybody because it's going to take all of us to be out there to make sure that they get set in the right direction and set the right places and make the areas available for our businesses.
Could I get a invite to the next meeting, please?
You hear that? All right. Thanks, everybody. Reach out.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mike.
How was your hike through the Grand Canyon, Steve? I saw a bunch of pictures, but I couldn't tell which one was you.
Yeah, it was amazing, of course, and it was neat because we were kind of celebrities. We were the first ones to bring burros to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and that anybody can remember. There's Rangers have been there for 22 years. They hadn't seen that before, so we did a cool pack trip down there. And the crux of it was getting the burros over the 440-foot long suspension bridge at the bottom, and stressful, but we did.
Like that? The burros didn't like that.
Well, they're not normally they're like that. We did a lot of training before we went at all the bridges around the area, so they did just fine. But it was stressful.
Well, good.
Yeah, great.
All right, well, thanks everybody, and those we'll see you on the next meeting. Thanks, Terry.